I'd like to call to order a meeting of the Board of Selectmen for the town of North Andover and licensing commissioners. Am I going to recall it? Well, we're returning to open session from executive session. We have two young gentlemen with us this evening who are here getting their government citizenship badges, and their names are
Sean and James.
Sean and James, and we'd love for you. Thank you, Dick. And we would love for you to come up and lead the Pledge of Allegiance for us. That was good. And he told me 3 times before, and I still couldn't. I should have wrote it down. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Hey, can you tell us what the badge is all about?
So this badge is about how people participate in the community and how we help in the community.
Okay, great.
Great.
Come back anytime.
You'll have an enjoyable evening, I promise.
And keep working towards the eagle. It's worth it.
All right, we'll begin with approval of minutes from April 11th.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as written from April 11th, right?
Second.
Session.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to communication and announcements. Well, we're going to move on from recognition of retared Fire Chief Andrew Melnikas. Our new fire chief is in the room.
But he came for the Chief Melnikas.
He apparently no longer has a watch.
Yes, and good for him.
You should get a watch when you retire.
Okay.
Although all 5 of us had the pleasure of attending Chief Melnikas' retirement party on Saturday evening, and we did present him with a proclamation and a beautiful picture and some roses for his lovely wife. So he probably figured, I don't need to come again.
Either that or he's just running a few minutes late.
Yeah.
If you listen to the roast, he had some issues with being timely. So this will continue that streak.
Next, we are going to invite John Simons from our planning board up.
Rebecca Oldham from the planning department.
Thank you, Rebecca. I should have taken him.
So we have a few, well, we're going to talk about the zoning articles, correct?
Yes, you are. Articles 9 through 13. number
Yes, yes. And actually number 16 too.
That's in the
one.
packet.
16, Rebecca? On the agenda. The agenda for votes are only 9 through 13.
Okay. So let me just sort of provide a little bit of context for the zoning articles. I don't think this was really a big year in terms of zoning changes. There were a number of changes where people had come to us a while back. We listened to them carefully. We generally, if it's something that we want to support, we try to do it as a planning board article so we can control the pen and do it the way we'd like to do it. And in a couple cases, we did this when we'll talk about one of the articles that is a citizen petition. So in general, I think they're relatively modest. It's a combination of requests that have come that we've worked with applicants on that we think we can support, and there are articles, and there's a few technical changes as well. So if you go through the list, Article 9 is really a technical change to get us compliant with the Massachusetts stormwater standards. So it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It's something that is a cleanup item from prior years where we put the language in for site plan review to be consistent with the stormwater standards. Really not any more than that. Not very exotic, but it's really a technical change in the bylaw. Article 10 is a much more interesting one. This is that if you remember, I'm trying to think if we've talked about it in the past, but the Edgewood Retirement Community, we have a existing bylaw, the Continuing Care Retirement Community, that has certain standards in terms of the total amount of development that can be done in a CCRC and where the development can be done. Back probably about 9 months ago, the people at Edgewood came to us and said that they wanted to put in a, really it's an Alzheimer's unit there. And we looked at it from a number of perspectives. Obviously, the social need was one of them, but also there's a land use, very interesting land use play that came into play. The property that they're talking about putting this on is a property. It's actually the one property in that area that is privately owned. Between Edgewood and the town and the trustees, every other property in that area is protected open space. And basically, the proposition was that on one small corner of the land, we would put this Alzheimer's unit, and then the rest of the land, of 18 acres, about 15 of the acres, would be donated to the town as permanent open space. And in addition to that, we would get access easements through that property and through the abutting Edgewood property so that the trails would continue to, that people actually walk on today would be, the town would have an easement for that. So this one is partially a zoning change, but it's also partly, frankly, a land use, an opportunity to grab some open space right on the critical area at the same time. So what this change does is it allows for it adds additional units that Edgewood could build, which any CCRC could build, and it allows, under strict restrictions, a certain amount of usage of that property in the watershed. The applicant would still have to come back to the planning board for a formal hearing and so on and so forth, but this enables them to give them the zoning relief to do that as well. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about
and
that.
This property is in the back of Edgewood?
It is right on the lake. It is the property, if you look at it, there's Edgewood property that is right on the lake, then there's this property, then there's all the town-owned property. Yes. So.
But on the backside,
right on the lake.
When you say right on the lake, will it ruin all the work that we've done?
No. The property, where this is going to be built is actually going to be on the very far end, nestled under really the existing Edgewood property. In other words, if you went out there and you looked at where this is going to be located, it's just about right next to the existing Edgewood property. It would look like an extension of that. No,
It scared me when you said it was going to be right.
Oh, the building. Yeah, no, the building would not be anywhere close to where my point is. The land that we're getting protected is land that's right on the lake. But no, this would be.
If you're out on the lake in a canoe or something, you're not.
You wouldn't even see it. No,
Okay,
you would see it. You would. In fact, we spent a lot of time looking at, doing sort of a modified site plan review in advance so that we could see exactly where they were going to put this, and it would be tucked in behind the existing building, so you would think it was part of the existing Edgewood property, and then we get the extra 15 acres with the land close to the water.
You may recall the discussion last year under the Community Preservation Committee, one of the open space, initial discussions of possible open space purchases was the Rockwell property. This is the property in question.
Yeah.
So instead of the purchase in this case, there'll be expansion of the Edgewood facility for a critical need, Alzheimer's care, and the remaining 15 of the 19 acres would be preserved in perpetuity all the way down to the lake. So really the development is on the Edgewood side. There's some discussion about some parking which would allow access to the trails associated with the developments for residents who may want to access the trails as well.
Very good.
Very good.
So, moving into Article 11, this is another one of the articles where we had gotten a request from an applicant and did some studying of this Quarter Development District. The Quarter Development District 3 is the land that is right on the other side of the Lucent Osgood Landing property. It's all the land on the other side of the street, basically, from Barker's farm down. And one of the things that's happened here, there's a little bit of a push and a pull that's going on now, is that there are a number of contractor yards out there. Peter Breen, Tyler Monroe, and other people have had contractors' yards, and there's one other individual that basically would like to put one in there right next to the existing ones. And the way the bylaw is written is it gives us some protection to allow that use, but do it in such a way that it doesn't have an adverse impact on the neighborhood or anything else. And we think it's fair to allow that use given the pattern of development in that area and the consistency of what's they're proposing with what's already there. So this is an amendment to allow contractors' yards in that district, the CDC3 district. So, and we had like 3 or 4 hearings on it. We spent a lot of time talking about it. All the abutters know about it. Nobody seems to have a problem with it. So, that's Article 11. 12 and 13, I don't know. Okay. Yeah, 2 street acceptances, and I think neither of them, 12 and 13, do we have any issues with? The planner has reviewed them, DPW has reviewed them, everybody's fine with them.
They've been before this board, John, for the public hearing as well.
Yeah, and in addition, interestingly enough, this is a little bit of tidbit of history, that Hitching Post is a legacy one. It's pretty old, as anybody would remember, but somebody sued us to force the issue on this, and so this is part of the resolution that we would put it through. But it clearly is ready for it. I don't think there's going to be any issues, and there is going to be a public hearing. So.
Already had it.
Yeah, I already had the public hearing.
So that's an interesting backstory. So we were students to put that on. What happens if town meeting chooses not to?
That's a good question. Why anybody would want to litigate it? Because they literally litigated it to get like less than $10,000 of bond money back, which is kind of crazy. But that's what ended up happening. But we said fine, it wasn't a problem. I mean, I would be shocked if people would vote against it. There's no reason to vote against it. It's done. It's okay.
I mean,
So, yeah.
it could still happen. So.
It's there's a lot of things that can happen. That's for sure. So the other one that I wanted to mention is Article 16, which is a zoning article. It's a citizen petition, which we have not yet voted on. We're actually still hearing it, which is the Forgetta property. We are asked to make 2 changes to the bylaw. One change to the bylaw is to make the planning board the special permit granting authority for the use that's being proposed. That basically in this district, there are some uses that are allowed by right, but there are some uses that are allowed by special permit, which residential is one of them. And the special permit use is, the special permit granting board, in this case, is the zoning board of appeals, not the planning board. The applicant asked that the planning board be made the special permit granting authority so that all the approvals, site plan review and the special permit would be under one board. So that's one of the 2 changes that's proposed. The other change is to propose a little bit more flexibility in terms of height, in terms of the residential structure. Initially, when the applicant proposed it, it was open-ended.
I just want to caution, because what we've placed on the agenda is very specifically 9 through 13, and unless the planning board has voted on 16, I'm cautious to have.
Fair enough. We just did not vote. I wasn't sure if you had any. If you don't want me to go through it, I'm fine with that.
This was posted specifically to stay within what the planning board has taken action of, because you were going to be here. So what's specific on the agenda is Articles 9 through 13. I think if there's some context or some change to what's happened with that article, that's...
Yeah, I mean, probably then, I think what I said is probably enough, is we're still deliberating it. There's 2 changes. One is the granting authority, and one is the height. And we're still talking about, we're not sure which way we're going to go yet, but, we meet next week, and we'll probably decide then, so.
Okay, so that's good information. The hearing on that article is...
Yeah, the public hearing started at our meeting last week, correct?
It did. We'll close on May 3rd.
And then we'll finish it off May 3rd, so.
So we'll recommend that the Selectmen, that'll be one of the articles you haven't taken action on, so we'll recommend that be placed on the Selectmen's agenda before town meeting, on the night of town meeting before.
So we'll have the opportunity to hear from John Simon.
If we can pull John Simons away, we'll provide you any transcripts they have from the planning board, or have someone from the planning department there to describe any act. By that point, the planning board, we think, will have made
Yeah,
decision.
we'll have made it on the 3rd, so we can, send
Figure
a
out.
note
Yeah.
to the board.
Either
of
Rebecca
Selectmen
or Jean or
explaining
John or
the
some-
context
So
of
we
the
can have a
decision.
meeting prior.
Yeah, we always have a meeting prior
Yeah,
to town meeting. Yeah,
like
6
we do
o'clock.
too usually. There have been times in the past where we didn't vote on certain things until the night of the
Till the
meeting.
night
This
of,
year, I don't think that will be the case, but just in case, so.
And this is a citizen petition, so I would expect that evening to have,
Yeah.
Petitioner.
yeah,
Yeah.
a petitioner there as well as a
Right.
presentation.
Yeah, so, yeah, okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay, we're going to go back and recognize our retired fire chief, Andrew Melnikas, because he has joined us.
You come in with the glasses and the bow tie. Yeah, in the consent section.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we all, as I stated earlier, why don't you come up? And we had the pleasure of enjoying the celebration for retired Chief Melnikas on Saturday evening.
The pleasure was all mine. I mean, it's... Can I ask one question?
Of
prior to
course you
getting
can.
started? Is this a particular certificate of appreciation from perhaps Raymond?
Yeah.
I know that.
You got me on Saturday, that was enough.
I'm sorry. I apologize for being slightly tardy.
No, we just happened to move quickly. Are you tired? Still recovering? No watch?
I'm sitting there thinking I got enough certificates the other night, but I probably should show up. But anyway,
Well, in all honesty, this is for the viewing audience because you'll just get a copy of the certificate we gave you on Saturday night. But we did want the town to know what we did make a resolution of appreciation for you, Chief. And whereas Chief Andrew Melnikas began his distinguished career with the North Andover Fire Department on March 5th, 1978, working as a reserve firefighter, whereas he was hired as a full-time firefighter on December 6th, 1981, and was promoted to fire lieutenant on July 29th, 1985, whereas he was promoted to provisional deputy chief on March 15th, 2010, and became fire chief on June 7th, 2010, whereas Chief Melnikas worked diligently to understand the needs of the community and how the North Andover Fire Department could best meet those needs and make North Andover a leader in fire service and emergency medical services, whereas Chief Melnikas provided outstanding support and service to the residents of North Andover and businesses of North Andover as well, whereas Chief Melnikas had dedicated his professional career to the people of North Andover, and whereas Chief Melnikas has demonstrated throughout his career an outstanding level of professionalism, dedication, and willingness to help others, he will be greatly missed. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the North Andover Board of Selectmen that we are sincerely appreciative of Chief Andrew Melnikas for his hard work, determination, and commitment to the town of North Andover during these past 38 years, and we wish him good fortune in his future endeavors. Presented actually on Saturday, April 23rd, and again today in copy
I say it
form.
sounded familiar.
But I am going to give you the copy, too. Thank you.
Don't trip, because you're not on workers' comp anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
Raymond, I'll have to come by and say hi. Oh, sure, anytime.
Thank you for everything. Moving on to consent items, we have some generous folks in town. And we will begin with accepting a donation of $6,000 from the Friends of the North Andover Senior Center and our Borderline Running Club for the 4th of July fireworks display. Would you guys like to come up? And amazing and incredibly awesome.
I'm Martha Cashins. I'm the president of the Friends of the North Andover Senior Center. And with Chris Marshall, who is in charge or is the person that I deal with from the Borderline Running Club. I'm not sure exactly what your title is. And the Borderline Running Club always, well, in the past 2 years or 3 years, have given the funds that they raise from the 4th of July race to the Friends of the North Andover Senior Center. And they have asked us last year and again this year to give a portion of that money to the festival committee for the fireworks in town. And so it's my pleasure to give you this money, and it's wonderful working with the Borderline Running Club. They have been so generous to the Friends. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, it's amazing. Great partnership.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's amazing.
And the whole town will get to enjoy it as well.
I know. It's a wonderful thing.
It's a wonderful thing, as we've said before, that when we talked about Stevie's Pond, sometimes this is families' vacation. It is their vacation, is 4th of July and the fireworks and going to Stevie's Pond. And it's a quality of life thing, and it brings joy and memory to so many families. So it's great. Thank you both.
Thank you. Well, I think the seniors in North Andover, I'm sure that most of them go to the fireworks in town, and they don't go to fireworks anywhere else.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so it's just wonderful.
It is really just wonderful. It's great. It's a present to all of us. So thank you.
Thank
Do you have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you again.
We'll see you in about a month.
Yes. I was like, we should have doubled up tonight.
Who do I give this to?
We might be a little early, yeah.
Give it to the
Don't
king.
give it to Dawn.
Yeah,
If it goes down that shirt, Don, we're going to ask for a new check.
That's right. I don't know. Okay, we have some appointments before us this evening. Not sure if anyone's in the room, but
I don't think so.
We had the opportunity, this was a few weeks ago, to meet with, in this case, Krishna Patel, who was interested in joining the festival committee. She's a young woman in a recent transplant to town from Burlington, North Reading, and picked Village Green to live in. So
Nice.
she's interested in getting involved and thought that the festival committee would be a fun way to get involved. So certainly, all hands are welcomed. So.
right.
Very enthusiastic. She's a great girl. I would move approval.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye, and thank you.
And then we have a repeat customer, which is great, Gail Henney, to the Poet Laureate Committee. Of course, she is a former Poet Laureate and a poet, and again, very enthusiastic about poetry. And it's amazing how the only time you really heard about poetry is in school, when you have to memorize. But they've got a group at the library now where they do readings, they do all, it's really, poetry really has a resurgence. So she's very enthusiastic and wonderful to have her back. So I would move
Fantastic.
approval.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And thank you to both of them for coming forward, as I always say. North Andover would grind to a halt without our volunteers, so thank you. Okay, we're moving on to our town meeting warrant recommendations for Articles 9 through 13. We have options. That would be favorable action, unfavorable action, take no action, and to be made at town meeting.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we move favorable for Articles 9 through 13. I'm going to take them as a group.
All those in favor? Aye. Favorable action on all brought before us this evening.
So, Madam Chairman, that leaves 3 articles, I believe: the Community Preservation Act Article 16, which is a citizen petition on a zoning change, and the meals tax citizen petition, which I believe is Article 15. As the remaining articles, the board needs to take action on, so we'll add those to the agenda of the May 10th town meeting at 6 o'clock.
Are there still negotiations going on with the CPA article, or is that locked down?
As far as I've heard, there's no change to what I can follow up with Mr. Simons before the May 10th meeting.
In the case of the meals tax, we voted as a board not to recommend unfavorable action at the prior meeting.
We didn't take any action on it.
Wanted to talk to
Okay.
restaurant. There were 3 of us.
No, that's what we voted not to do that, but I didn't know if that.
You didn't actually vote.
Yeah.
You took no action on that. Either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we did because a motion was made and seconded, but then we voted against it. That's what I'm
To be
asking.
made at town meeting with your eventual.
Make it a town meeting.
So you'll have the same options that Ms. Watson identified the night of town meeting. You can choose favorable action, unfavorable action, or no.
Okay.
And that'll be reported the night of town meeting. We come out of regular session, we'll inform the moderator if there's been any change on the positions, if they've taken actions of some sort on those 3 articles. I don't remember the CPC article, but the other articles are Article 15 and 16 CPC, so later on. And we'll inform the moderator of any votes you will have taken at that point, including these votes, so that there's an update to that.
Do we have any meetings scheduled before?
No.
No.
So the community preservation article, which we have not had information on, is not going to be, how are we going to vote on that?
Well, you've heard from Mr. Simons about community preservation. The board decided to take no action largely around the open space purchase.
Yeah.
I will continue to update the board if there's any change by the CPC or any updated information. You'll have that in your packages going into the meeting prior to town meeting, and it'll be added to the agenda, and at that point, if you feel like you have sufficient information, that's fine. Quite frankly, not having
They do.
sufficient information in and of itself is having information. So we'll be adding those to the agenda of the May 10th meeting, and whatever information we have, we'll continue to forward it to the board.
Okay, thank you. Our final consent our final consent item for the evening, I think, is one that we are all glad is being finished and wrapped up this evening, and it is the ratification of the soon-to-be Police Chief Charles Gray's contract. Negotiations are over, and time for the contract to be ratified. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Should we sign the contract now?
You do that.
While we're doing that, if I could take a motion to move it.
Licensing?
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're now in licensing, all right. So we have 15 items tonight in licensing, but they're all from the Merrimack College. It's graduation weekend, so I can just reference them all, and I would suggest we take a single vote on them. But the items are a one-day wine and malt license for a tournament celebration on Saturday, April 30th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., a one-day all-alcohol license for the Augustin Provincial Reception on Saturday, May 14th from 5:30 to 8:30, a one-day malt and wine license for commencement celebration at the SAC, May 20th, 6:30 to 10:30, a one-day wine and malt license for a legacy celebration on May 21st from 10:30 to 4:30, one-day all-alcohol license for honorary degree reception at the Rogers Center on May 21st from 5:30 to 10:30, a one-day wine and malt license for honors convocation at the SAC Campus Center on May 21st, 12:30 to 4:30, a one-day wine and malt license for a baccalaureate reception at the SAC on Saturday, May 21st from 3:30 to 8:30, a one-day wine and malt license for undergraduate commencement celebration at the SAC on Sunday, May 22nd from 11:30 to 3:30, a one-day wine and malt license for an employee barbecue at the SAC Campus Center on May 23rd at 10:30 to 3, from 10:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., a one-day all-alcohol license for an alumni reunion reception at the Rogers Center on Friday, June 3rd from 4:30 to 7:30, a one-day all-alcohol license for an alumni reunion reception at Deegan West on Friday, June 3rd from 5:30 to 8:30, they're doing a lot of drinking up there. A one-day all-alcohol license for an alumni reunion reception at Sanctuary Cafe, Saturday, June 4th, 5:30 to 9:30, a one-day wine and malt license for alumni reunion reception, Saturday, June 4th, from 10:30 to 3:30, one-day wine and malt license for an alumni reunion reception at the Writers' House on June 4th, from 12:30 to 4:30, And finally, a one-day all-alcohol license for an alumni reception at the Rogers Center for Performing Arts, June 4th, 2016, from 5:30 to 9:30. Really makes me wish I was an alumni. So I would suggest we take those all as one, unless you want me to read them again.
Second.
All those, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Motion
That's,
for licensing.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're out of licensing.
And we are back into old business. This evening, under old business, we have reconsideration of the recommendation to hire an in-house counsel. Discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we talked about this at a previous meeting, and I sort of reserved the right to revisit it again when we discussed it. I think a couple things that, this is the in-house counsel, and basically what it costs the town, and it's something different than we've done. We've done it way in the past, not me, but previous boards. I had just several concerns that the cost to bring in an in-house counsel, in my estimation, in reviewing some of these things, is just considerably more than what the practice we have now. We pay, frankly, sort of as we go with our town council and other legal services. So looking at this at a salary, and Ms. Manager, you correct me if I'm wrong, but of about $100,000, we would contribute 60, the schools would contribute 40,000, but that's still taxpayer money. There's no savings there. It's still that. Benefits would be approximately $30,000, for health insurance, retirement, so forth and so on, so that we're at 130. But we also need our special counsel. It doesn't mean we don't have our special counsel, and our special counsel is labor relations, personnel, could be environmental. There's a whole host of other things that would be on top of that. Maybe we might need administrative services, maybe not. So it's also expenses. We don't pay for the expenses of our counsels when we hire them. And then adding to that was also our present town council has offered to give us 2 hours a week in one of our buildings, whether it be for the town or for the school department, just to come in. If nobody comes in, he'll work on town things for free. So that's an additional savings of $18,000. It's a lot of money. It's that we're paying, in my estimation, or potentially paying above and beyond what we're already paying. I'd say it's close to double. We don't do things like that in North Andover. We kind of like to ferret out every dollar and put it towards something else. But it's not just that. There's other things that are going on for our town at this time of year. As we've just seen, we're hiring along with what we would be hiring for town council. We're hiring a new fire chief, police chief, due to retirement, DPW, building commissioner, board of health, and we've got the big project of renovating town hall. Do we really want to take this down and hiring a new town council that's going to cost us more? And I just think at this time we should at least, let's see how it goes with him coming in for a couple hours a month. If I said a week, I didn't mean to say that, for free. And that's pretty much it. I don't think I really need to go into too much more. I think the numbers clearly speak for themselves. To the town manager's credit, a lot of our legal costs have been reduced because he keeps a watchful eye on it. And I do understand that some people think, oh, it would be great to have somebody right there in the building at all times, but they're still just a phone call away. And they will be there, town council or whoever will be there at least 2 hours a month just to come in, and he's doing it as, I guess, as a measure of good faith for the years that he's worked for the town. So I'm asking the board to reconsider this. Let's save it for another time. I don't think, we're not a city form of government where it's common practice. I just don't see there's the value at this price point. And would ask the board to reconsider their decision. I do know, this is the other part that was truly, it's our appointment. The charter is set up the checks and balances. Town council is our appointment. Town accountant is our appointment, meaning we can go to them. Their obligation is directly to the Board of Selectmen, as well as the police chief, the fire chief, amongst other appointments that we have. This is the checks and balances. And I feel as though when we bring the school committee, 2 members of the school committee, 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, the town manager and the superintendent, to pre-screen our appointment, I find really troubling. It should only be our appointment. We should do the hiring. We should do the firing. But if the school department wants to share in the use, that's totally separate. But I'm really uncomfortable of turning over our appointment to a subcommittee. It should be with us. And I could go on and list a few other things as well.
Madam Chair, if I may. I don't think that we're abdicating anything by creating the subcommittee. In fact, I actually think it's a testament to the school committee that they, in essence, have entrusted us with the responsibility as a board, because it is ultimately our appointment to select the council that will serve both bodies.
But just a portion of that.
And
We're not doing their whole legal. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and as is the case with our current arrangement with Mr. Herbalis and his law firm, they do not handle 100% of our legal as well.
No, they do not.
My advocacy, I feel like this is a really smart move on behalf of our town and on behalf of the town manager. I'm grateful that you included this, because I explained this to a few colleagues. I think that some of you have been on so long you may have forgotten what it's like to be a brand new member of the Board of Selectmen. And when I joined, I found myself having a lot of questions and truly being reluctant to ask our town attorney, not because I didn't think he'd give me the right answer, but because of the cost per hour. Anytime I made a phone call, it would cost the town money. And I've been professionally in the role where you have to go through that type of weighing. And I know when speaking to town employees, there are questions that come up on a daily basis, and they have to weigh, is it worth the cost of that 15-minute phone call, or do they spend 45 minutes or an hour researching that question, and even after researching that question, not necessarily knowing, is that actually the right answer? So we've become accustomed as a board, and I think it's the right mentality to have, which is let's try and find the best services at the lowest cost. I think that this is this is an expense that I would equate to insurance, where we're going out there, we're spending a little bit more, but we're bringing legal services in-house to the benefit of all of our employees, but to us as well. And so, the process, and I don't think that's an invalid statement you made about the process, the existence of the subcommittee. But whether you have questions about the process and whether you have questions with what the result would be, which is bringing a council in-house, are two different things. And I'm happy with the process as well, because I think that we envision the subcommittee as being truly collaborative and making sure that we as a board don't have to publicly vet all of the applicants that would come before us. I think that we would find that quite a few attorneys would apply that perhaps wouldn't be qualified. But ultimately, we as a board will get to select somebody that our appointed representatives on the subcommittee, as well as the school committee's appointed representatives, had a chance to just view and give to us. The same way, actually, Mr. Mailer, you were selected as a result of a subcommittee appointed by this board vetting you. And I think that we would agree. I think we've already expressed it, in fact, recently, that there's no greater appointment this board has. And we used a subcommittee to vet the many qualified individuals and whittle them down so that this board, the board that preceded me, had the opportunity to select a qualified person. And as in the town charter, we're not abdicating any responsibility. This town council still would answer ultimately to us the same way that they always have. But it would really create, not to insert politics into this, but I truly feel reluctant to call our town council whenever I have a basic question, because I don't want to then turn around and say, well, Phil, you've cost the town $4,000 because you've called even just once a month, every month. Professionally, I had the opportunity at one point to be in that professional role for a municipality where part of my tenure was covered by an in-house counsel, and I frequently can remember running down and asking basic questions because I was a new employee at the time. And when I heard the list of all these new employees, you forget just how many people have recently joined our town government as staff. they were selected because they were qualified individuals, as was I. But being that these people are all in new positions, I would say that only argues for bringing somebody in-house, because I can imagine many of them will have questions about their role and what they're allowed to do, especially as many of them have entered into a management position they hadn't previously been in.
But do you think it's worth double the cost? You think it's worth over $100,000 versus just picking up the phone? I don't see
What
it.
do we spend annually? What do we spend annually now?
Can I talk to that a little bit, just as...
Of
just
course.
more in sort of data. So I arrived in, when was it again? No, December of 2011. In the 4 years preceding my arrival, we spent $951,728.85. It was not identified...
Cumulative on the 4.
Cumulative in the 4 years.
4 years prior to arrival.
$951,728.85 in council
From
fees.
2008 to 2011.
Yep. It was not identified as a goal of mine, not identified in an interview question, not identified as something to focus on. It doesn't mean that the board necessarily accepted it, but I think it was just where we were. In the 4 years since then, we have spent $378,258.98. So in the 4 years since my administration, the staff who works for me have focused on paying attention to that, particular line item, without, quite frankly, a particular directive from the board to do that. We've saved $573,000. So the idea of this wasn't to further drop the 378 with a goal of getting to zero, because we all know this is sort of a fundamental goal. It really was looking at the opportunity to use a portion of what I view as savings that we've created to get more resources. So we've made the conscious effort to drive fees down. Arguably, short of health insurance, the savings in legal costs have rivaled any other savings that we've been able to implement or realize over 4 years. But was to use a portion of those savings and reinvest that in a person who 37.5 hours a week can provide answers to things, as Mr. DiColigiero identified, that sometimes we just are cautious to ask because of the cost. So I struggle a little bit with the comparison to the last 4 years, because the last 4 years are an example of a success of driving down the cost by $500,000. If we were to have the same argument comparing it to the $951,000, then all of a sudden this would look like a windfall in savings.
Yep.
So it's difficult to compare it to the most recent 4 years, because those 4 years were a conscious effort to save dollars. And I'm looking at this a little bit. It's hard to compare a resource that includes people with other kinds of resources. But think of what we did with streetlights. We purchased streetlights for $89,000, saved $40,000 a year, each and every year. So we paid off those streetlights in 2 years. And now we're taking the savings we generate every year and reinvesting it in the asset, not just putting it to the bottom line. We did the same thing with energy. We invested $3.5 million. We realized more savings than the cost of the $3.5 million, and we invested those savings back into schools and back into town services so that we were better than we were before the savings. So we have a number of models where we take the savings we generate and reinvest them in the organization to be better at what we do. And I look at this as the same example. We're taking a portion of the savings we generated over the last 4 years, $500,000, and we're investing that not for the purpose of from 1 year to the next showing savings in the legal line item, but so that we have a resource that we can all go to in times that we otherwise are not doing that today because we're cautious about the cost. So for me, it's a little bit difficult to look at the last 4, because if you looked at the last 8, the picture would be dramatically different. I'll leave up to you guys to decide the appointing authority piece. I respect that. I would say Lynn Savage, who is, in my opinion, the world's best finance director, reports to you guys. But on a day-to-day basis, she reports to me. It's never been an issue. It's never been a concern of the board. It's never led to any confusion about authority or charter. She serves in the role today. This is no different. Day-to-day authority is different than appointing authority. And I don't see any difference between having an in-house counsel with the appointing authorities of selectmen, as we do with the finance director today, who reports to the board, is appointed by the board, but reports to me. And that was the thinking.
The only thing, and I hear you, the only thing that I would question is, of course, there are good years and there's bad years with legal.
Always.
We can have, as Donnie would remember when we were dealing with them, my least favorite subject, but it comes up often, when we were dealing with the largest strip club in New England and a large transfer station. Believe me, the legal bills were high. Those are the things that do come into play. So you're right, you can't look at every year. And again, to your credit, the number has gone down. You've been very mindful of that. But it's still a long way to go with that and what this potentially does cost us. It's a lot of money. And I think as a measured approach, we could try, or maybe even work out an arrangement with whatever council to have them there a couple hours a month, again, for free, see how we do with that. Again, it's still just a phone call away. We're not paying for benefits. And what if it doesn't, what if the new council that we did hire doesn't work out? So then now we're looking at letting them go and also paying unemployment. But it's not only that. Who do we get that's going to have the years of experience, as some of our councils do have, whether it be herbalists or even Copeland and Page or Collins? These are really experienced attorneys.
Well, my understanding is, though, that, Collins and Copeland would still...
We still need them.
Would still be needed, or?
I would think it'd be somewhere in between. Great answer, right? I think there are things that done by our primary counsel today that I would expect in-house counsel to perform. I mean, it's important to understand as it relates to municipal law that we're not paying a paralegal rate and a partner rate and an associate rate. We're paying a rate. And whether the person is typing a memo or appearing on behalf of us in court, we're paying the same rate for every hour, period. That's just how it works. That's not a criticism to our counsel. That's how it works with everybody. From our perspective, we think there's a fair amount of our work that can be done by in-house counsel. And then there's other specialties or particular items where you'd want, if it's an environmental case, you'd bring in an environmental attorney. But we believe there's a fair amount of cases or fair amount of material that we deal with on a regular basis that could be handled by in-house counsel. I would say, and it's difficult to, I don't want to talk strategy from a legal perspective in this setting, but there's a fair amount of what could happen even from a collective bargaining perspective. Mr. Santilli and I handle most of bargaining today, and that the role of the council to date has been one of the items you see why there's been a significant decline here is a conscious effort by us that handle most of that bargaining. In this case, could I imagine in-house counsel now sitting in those sessions and providing a level of support? Because we've minimized the role, I could. So I think it provides that. And smaller examples, we have regular licensing questions where we're constantly challenged on whether or not we pick up the phone for a license that we're, one-day license, we're collecting, how much is a one-day license, $200? And we've got a question, it may cost us, a couple $100 more than that, just ask the legal question, where someone sitting in that office can help do that. I can tell you we need a review of our bylaw beyond the codification perspective, because over time it's been added as an collective process. We regularly need a review of our procurement contracts, as Mr. Santilli has experienced, because things change in that world. We could take a look at, for instance, our documents as it relates to licensing. They're just documents we haven't looked at in a long time. There are things not being done because in the day-to-day operation of our staff, it's not part of the core of what they do, but we're not going to pay a professional $170 to $200 an hour to review those, where someone in the building would. Those are some of the initial items I would see an in-house counsel working on. Not to craft new creative bylaws, but to organize our bylaws to make sure that they're representing what happens in a modern environment, looking at our licensing documents to make sure they're doing the same. And so there is work that can be done that makes us better for our residents and better for our businesses. There's a value add here. Is there a cost? I have said from the beginning,
You have.
This is not a savings. I have said it. I'm going to say it 3 more times tonight so there's no confusion. It's on every tape. This is not a savings initiative. This is about adding value. If you look at the net cost, just picking a number, as $30,000. It's not $100,000. I think that's a misnomer. But because we're already spending, this year we're going to head to about 110 or 120 this year alone. If we spend $50,000...
Yeah, the average is about 100.
No, the average in the last 3 years has been 100. This year it's going to be well over 100. In the 4 years previous to that, it was $951,000, an average of $250,000 per year. So it's hard to hold me up to the 100,000 because, quite frankly, my finger's been standing in the hole holding it back. So there's a point in which that's not practical. Some of it is, what's the thing? Past performance is not an indication of future something. What is that?
I don't know what it is.
But it basically means that I don't expect every year to be 100, and I don't expect every year to be 250. But I would say we're making a conscious effort to hold back certain things so that we're not spending to the degree we were in the past. And I think that we may spend more. But if you told me that in the office is going to be a full-time in-house counsel with the appropriate background, and the net cost to that was $30,000 or even $40,000 after, and I think it's closer to that number, if at all, then I think we're getting a tremendous value, because that person's salary is 3 times that. So it's not $100,000. I don't see any service requirement here. I see a person that comes in, I type my own memos, I do my own work, and occasions that I can't, Laurie does some of that. In licensing's case, we have a licensing secretary. We're not looking to create a full legal office with a paralegal and a secretary. We're looking to bring on someone who can provide both the intellectual capacity and the skills to help us be better at what we do. And there's a cost associated with that. But it's not a net cost of the exact salary. That doesn't make sense to me. We wouldn't take all that's being done today and continue to go outside and bring in this person to do more work. Then it would be $100,000. They're going to do some of this work. The town meeting warrant review, the licensing review, they're going to do that work. They're going to do some of the human resource work that's done by Copman and Page. They're probably going to sit in collective bargaining with some of the sessions we currently have with some of the unions. And they're going to look at the ways we do things to find out if there's additional improvement. But, that's, I think I've been pretty consistent about my perspective on it.
And I think there have been some boards, I've gotten some feedback where they would have preferred to have more access to legal counsel, but weren't able to do that. And I think, that in some ways puts us at a risk that we don't have that. We're going into some decisions without the benefit of having some questions answered. I mean, I know certainly this spring I would have had some questions that I'm kind of in the same boat as Phil. I wouldn't even think to ask our counsel now. I wouldn't even think to ask them. I would go to Andrew or someone else. But I think to have a legal counsel in-house would make it, for me would be beneficial too, to be able to ask some questions that I would have.
And you see no benefit of him making himself available to answer those questions?
2 hours a month. 2 hours a month seems like nothing to me.
I mean, any time, any more time is absolutely a benefit. But I also
see a benefit with that, but that's if you have a question, you have to wait. You know what I mean? What is that 2 hours? Will he keep track, or is he literally picking his 2 hours that he'll be in?
Do we have to meet him in a room, or is it an email? I mean, for me, to be able to email somebody or to call somebody
I've helped back many times.
Outside of those 2 hours.
But is that necessarily a bad thing? I mean, we don't want people...
No, that was going to be the next thing that I said. My concern is, are we going to inundate this person, and who will set the parameters, and it can't be a free-for-all if this comes...
And who are you going to get that's going to have all of this expertise and all of these...
Well, someone who's ready to leave an herbalist.
Because I've heard that question.
Who's done municipal, an herbalist's office. I don't think the problem, it's going to be problematic finding a qualified
Yeah, because we're not reinventing this wheel. Many
I
other towns and cities do this already.
Overloading the person is where I get a little concerned.
Well, I would say that the best way to look at it is you have counsel today. And it's interesting to sort of the org structure, and you guys appoint counsel. But part of my day-to-day responsibility is the measure the use of counsel. That exists today. Who gets it depending on expertise, whether we call counsel depending on the significance of the issue. That goes on today. The only difference is this person has a telephone number you're more familiar with. So it would be a responsibility of mine to try to balance that. We're not, again, it's about taking those things, the general municipal things, the obvious stuff, procurement, some of the collective bargaining, some of the human resource things. You're not looking for someone that can do everything. I would largely expect, I think, depending upon the response to resumes, that land use would still remain with whoever has the expertise in that. That's the primary.
Andrew, can I ask, right now, if there is an employee who... Like if I'm working in the clerk's office and I have a question, do they have the ability to call up our counsel, or do they have to get approval from you or your office first?
We just have a sort of a somewhat organic process. It wasn't always organic. I can tell you that part of the reason for this change, and we had devolved to the point that if a mid-level manager, even an administrative assistant had a question, they picked up the phone. And what we started to say was, okay, let's start to talk about this.
I agree.
And so we've managed it a little more effectively. And I would expect that it'll be like this. sort of flat at the beginning, and then there's going to be a spike as everybody gets familiar with the number, and we're going to have to manage through it. And that's partly like any other person's job and responsibility. They're going to have to sit there and make sure that they understand the priorities of the organization. That's management of time. That's not that unexpected.
I mean, I would assume, though, who has their own budgets? Like, does anybody, like the planning board or even the Affordable Housing Trust? Or,
Oh, you mean their own legal budget?
They don't have their own
I mean, they don't
legal
have their own budgets, but they have their own money.
No, they do not fund legal counsel. It's all
Ever.
under
It
one.
always goes
No,
under
it's
one
all
umbrella.
and that's
Okay.
part of what happens even with the planning board. Although we certainly have our standard practice here of supporting the planning board on decisions. All funding for legal counsel in the town comes from the legal counsel line item.
Okay.
That is your budget and your appointing authority.
But I mean, you can't charge it back.
We charge back only the CPC because their funding comes from a different source. So if you notice in those reports,
I
we
do.
charge back to the CPC.
Right.
For instance,
I did
if they're
notice that.
acquiring land, we're not going to go through the traditional legal budget.
No, and they spend big bucks.
Well, but we charge it back to the CPC because that's primarily
And
the
it's-
cost. We do not, although we may in the future, for instance, the process involved in renewing cable licenses. That's someone that we
I noticed that on here, too.
negotiate as well. We're going back into that process again. But only the CPC to date, if I have it right, is charged for their legal services. The planning board is the town's line item. I mean, there's a reason why the town's
Okay.
budget line item for legal services has been $185,000. It's because that was the average spending. These years were high, those years I identified, but I think if you went back even further, you'd find that that was the average spending on that line item. The average over the last 4 years has been $100,000.
But I also don't think that we should, kid ourselves either, that even if our town council comes in, that there will still be times when we're going to see very high legal bills because we'll need
Correct.
expertise outside.
Of course.
Madam Chairman, if I can make a couple of comments on this.
Please do.
One question is, who's going to do the secretarial work for this?
Yeah, I went over that. I would describe, the best example I can give you in our building is my relationship with Laurie Burzlaff. I don't walk out with a handful of either, thank God you probably couldn't read them, buck slips or other notes and have her type them. In municipal government, we want resources. We want people with broad enough skill to do multiple things. So Ray handles his own legwork in terms of those stuff. I do as well. My pay per hour would be greater than the rate pay per hour for an attorney. We use the resources, people like Laurie and other folks, to fill in those gaps when the person themselves can't complete the work. We're not creating Mailer, Santilli and Mailer, the law firm. We're simply bringing in a resource that can be supported with the existing resources we have. Do you want to be first, Santilli?
No, I just,
Wasn't sure.
I was trying to figure out who the second mailer was.
We're creating an opportunity that the person, when those occasions happen and there's research, for instance, again, if there's licensing, we have a licensing administrative staff member. That person would be involved in supporting the legal counsel. If it's a land use matter, I would expect the planning staff to be involved in supporting the attorney. If it comes out of our office, it's something coming from the Board of Selectmen, Laurie or I would support that person. That's generally how we run every department here. If it was a public works matter, it'd be the
Another
same.
thing too,
Do your own thing.
basically being a Scotsman, I'm very concerned with money, okay? Growing up as a single-parent child on welfare, having Spam and bologna for your main meals, I'm really concerned about the cost. That's the main cost. I know it has to happen, it's going to, but the other main thing is, if we hire a new counsel, who's in charge of that new counsel?
It's exactly like the finance director model. On a day-to-day basis.
What I'm trying to get
Same thing that
at,
happens today.
No, he's got a point, though.
who would fire him or hire him?
You guys could.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because that's our point. We used to.
The existing examples, we're not breaking any molds here. We have a police chief, we have a fire chief, we have a finance director. All of those are appointed by you folks. On a day-to-day basis, we have a legal counsel, by the way. On a day-to-day basis, I'm the one interacting with legal counsel. That is not a relationship change. So You guys set the direction, and we work within that construct to provide direction to the person.
I don't think that we interact that much with attorney herbalists because all of us are afraid to spend money.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it could be.
Now,
You're not
so,
in contact,
or
so I mean, we have his email.
right. Now, if you bring in a town council, there can't be a gatekeeper. If selectmen will be contacting him on a
I
regular
would say
basis.
this, and if, I would say this but in fairness, I would say this. If 5 selectmen call the town council on 5
Can't be a
separate...
gatekeeper.
Boy, well, we
Andrew,
don't
Mike,
do that with...
If I could step in, I would see, I envision, because we are, the subcommittee is supposed to be finalizing this brand new position on a job description. I envisioned this as being very similar to the relationship you have established to a certain degree with other department heads who we appoint, where there's a certain give and take. We trust you to answer our questions, but also, of course, there are times where I think, again, because this board has a certain responsibility to oversee you, so so if I may, because this is the thing this is the paradox I faced when I joined the Board of Selectmen. One of my responsibilities as a selectman, all 5 of us, is to oversee, in essence, a town manager, and yet you were the only resource I had to really inquire about how do I oversee to a certain degree without being concerned about spending money.
That was unfortunate, because I do have to tell you that new members of the Board of Selectmen have met with town council. They've met with them.
As did I, but I want to say, if we're talking about cost conscious, there's a certain degree, I don't know if guilt or pressure not to call the town council.
Not by me.
No, but it's quite frankly, actually, it's motivated exactly by this discussion. We're so concerned about costs, and we're looking at driving down costs. I mean, I would have to ask on a given day. I mean, maybe Lori might be a better person to ask than you, Andrew. Is how many times a day do you encounter questions? No. How many times a day do you encounter questions where you say, even for a fraction of a second, should I call Tom and ask? Is this worth calling Tom and asking? Or that you wish you had somebody to ask? I mean, I would actually argue this is something like insurance. I mean, yeah, it stinks to pay for insurance, but at the same time, and it certainly increased costs in one respect, but it's good to have that type of coverage when the questions pop up, because how can you predict the questions now? If you could predict the questions now, you would have sent in the list to Tom Herbalist 2 months ago and said, these are going to be all my legal questions this year. I mean, I think that this is I
think there's a general protocol that we as selectmen try to follow. We don't pick up and call department heads before we talk to Andrew. We don't, it's generally. Sometimes it happens, but generally, it's just, I think we look at the town as a business, then there's a hierarchy, exactly.
Well, and Andrew has been very good.
Today, it still is.
Absolutely.
They all work for us, the appointments. So I think my concern is, A, that we're going to inundate this person. I'm afraid of that. I'm just nervous of that because I don't know.
But why?
And,
why are you afraid of inundating?
and I'm not just saying us, I'm saying in general, like now that there's this brain in the room.
Another brain.
Another brain.
Can I respond actually specifically to that question?
What is this person going to do for 37 and a half hours? Now we're saying inundating. I prefer to inundate than to...
I don't think that's a bad thing.
Agree. You're right.
If the person is too busy, and then we're going to be able to come back and say, this person is now doing all of this, things we weren't
That's a
doing
good
in the
point.
past.
Good point.
That's okay.
I mean, and that's actually, if inundation is that concern, then that means there are that many questions that we're currently letting
simmer on the bottom.
That's a good problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's actually valid. Very valid. Personally, I'll be very honest. The money isn't while I want to always save money, I do think in the long run this saves the community money. I have concerns because a sister community, I call it a sister community, a neighboring community rather, has changed their mind about this. I've seen it work in other neighboring communities, but they're cities. I have my reservations. I wish we could put a time limit on
Well, we can. We could revisit this at any,
Well, that's just, that was my point. Try the 2 hours.
I think that, in all honesty, while I've had a nice working relationship with our current council, 2 hours a month is, I don't know.
Even 2 hours a week. It wasn't initially. Was it a week?
Oh, it's a week?
It's a week. I'm
No.
sorry. I think it's a
So
month.
2 hours a month?
Is it 2 hours a month?
Well, it had a value, and the value was 18,000, and if the board
It's
was going...
18,000, whatever it
If
is.
the board-
Right, but what if it's,
It's a- and he
it's
charges-
his hour that he's
and he
here in
charges
2 hours
180.
and nobody's sitting, nobody
He
has any
charges
questions that
180
week?
180 an hour.
But
If the board
Which
was
is
going...
actually,
if the board were
frankly,
going
I
in
know
that
it's
direction-
shocking, but that's low for town council for me.
If the board were going in that direction...
It's ridiculously
I'd
low from
simply-
the attorney in the room.
If
Yeah.
the board were going that direction, I would simply say, to me, there is no value having someone for 2 hours a week or 2 hours a month. Simply
I
take the dollar value
don't.
off the bill, subtract
then-
it from the bill. I'm not saying that I prefer that to this, but if you were going to do something, and there was a value that Mr. Herbalist has identified to what he's offering, then take it off the bill, because I get more value having you take it off the bill than
that's what
sitting
I
there
mean.
for 2 hours.
He's offering us 2 hours a week at his time in town hall. It's not, I'm going to take 2 hours of calls and 2 hours of emails and I'm not charging. It's, I will come for 2 hours that I choose and you can come ask me anything you want.
But
And then I'm not going to charge you for
But like, so let's
But
use
then-
the example
Or
of
am I
licensing.
misunderstanding?
I think, well, I don't know what time schedule, I have no idea.
But that's what I mean. He's not giving us 2 hours a
Yes, he
month.
is, because
No,
if he-
he's not.
No. If no one comes, he's working on other stuff that he would have charged for free.
I mean, I see though that this, I mean, just as we could experiment with that, why not make this step, see if it works in-house, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. I mean, I see, just from my personal experience.
You're going to fire somebody? Oh, no, I don't want to go that route.
So for me...
I mean, it's
but
it's
for
a
me-
contract.
but-
We're appointing somebody, and if they're not performing, or we see an opportunity to reduce costs,
That's
reducing
how-
costs is reducing
Maybe it's
costs.
a year contract to begin with.
But can I just ask a question? That's fine.
That's a good thought.
But what's this? But
Oh,
what's
you'll
the,
never get anybody good knowing that.
what's the standard? You can't employ people without
Yeah.
telling them what the standard is.
Mhm.
If we have 5 people who can't agree, and that's not uncommon, right? We have 5 people that can't agree, and 3 or a majority continue to proceed, and then in the end we say we're going to do this for a year. What's the milestone? What's the benchmark? What are we comparing to?
You're right.
Because we
Absolutely.
come back a year
Absolutely.
later, and 3 people say smashing success. It cost us $30,000 more, but boy, we got this done. And someone else says $30,000 more. I told you it costs more, and that's not a success.
Yeah.
Then that's not
true, too.
a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah, I don't.
It's not a That's not a worthwhile endeavor.
Who does
If
the
you
review
believe-
of this person and their, everybody who works here gets an annual review, right?
Yes.
Maybe
Would-
we build it somehow around that to find the value.
It'd be unusual during an old business
Yeah.
item. But
I'm certainly willing to listen to it, but that's up to the.
I mean, I think that we've heard from our professional staff that they see a need, and who knows better but them. I think we've seen buy-in from our peers on the school committee that they were willing to cede their charter-given appointing authority effectively to us. They've appointed 2 members to the subcommittee, but we ultimately, this 5-member board has
I
to
do
say.
think that that's something to take into account. They have seated.
That department has seen the value. I mean, this isn't us. We're not operating in a vacuum. It's not the 6 of us sitting around a table and saying, "Oh, this seems like a good idea." It's been deliberated by other town boards who say, "You know, we're willing to cede a little bit of authority to get this resource into our community."
that's fine.
And I mean, professionally, I mean, again, it's not something. I don't even think it's apples to apples to compare us to other communities. It's, do we see value within our town hall? Small or large, do we see value? And I mean, I personally see a value for myself. I can't speak for each of you whether you would see value, but to then also hear from our town employees that they could see value as well.
I still think it's, I disagree with the town manager. I think it's a lot more money, especially long-term when you build in retirement costs, health insurance.
But in fairness, Rosemary, we agreed up front, it was your very first comment, that you would add a value associated with that. So
Of $30,000 a year.
right, but I don't want to keep on adding, and I'm not saying you are, but I don't want to keep it added to if the person starts, and the number in here was approximately 110, and you added, and we said, you and I spoke personally, we said if the value is 130, we started a value of 130. If
No,
this-
I said, we said 30,000 in benefit
well,
costs, because I
that's fine.
said,
It's not
could
what
you
I
give me the backup on it? And you said, no, we've agreed it's 30,000, and I think that's about right. So it's 110 plus 30,
And this is going to seem a convenient argument, but when we were spending $250,000 a year, no one was
No
saying
one
we
was
were
saying
spending
we
too
weren't.
much
We
money.
weren't.
No one was asking
We
for a
weren't.
review of council. No one was asking for a lower
We
rate
did,
per
but
hour.
not to the degree.
Not in public. I mean, and so
I didn't, and I freely admit that, and I was on the board during many of those years.
I really look
I
at this
didn't.
as adding
And I
value
did
back.
not look at legal until Andrew brought it up.
I guess I did, but again, I go back to finance.
To be
committee
honest.
Where we're looking at, I think it's just such a huge leap. But
Are we looking to continue?
Talked about it a lot. How do we move it?
Right.
Can we move?
Do we move?
if it's already there.
It's already in, it's already voted within the
Right,
budget.
I didn't know if there was a vote we had to take
No, I
tonight,
just
or...
asked to reconsider it.
So from my
Do
perspective.
we have a motion of reconsideration on
Oh,
it?
sorry.
I think we'll be on when you can do a motion for reconsideration. I don't even know.
No,
when
that's
you-
what's on the agenda, right?
No, can't we? We could have a reconsideration vote.
So we'd have to reconsider the budget.
No, the budget line, there's a line item for legal. It's
Yeah, could you explain how this goes? So say we did vote to
Same, legal
reconsider.
services, yeah.
It's just going to stay where it is.
You're not changing the budget.
We're not changing the budget.
Right.
It would either go up or
Using
down.
dollar, not going up and down. You're going to use the same legal line item that you've always used.
No, but what I'm saying is depending on the cost that year, that's,
I would say to you that it's going to remain the same legal budget. We typically have been spending under that legal budget. For the 4 years prior to the last 4 years, we were spending over that legal budget. But I would expect that budget will remain.
Well, we're
but it's
gonna know
unchanged.
sooner
We're gonna
than
know.
later.
I would say to this point, if there's an interest, well, that's not even the right word, but if there's a desire, interest to evaluate the competence of a person who serves in this role, that of course makes perfect sense. As it evaluates success, boy, I don't know what that's going to mean.
No, I think I meant more of the confidence. I mean, this person needs...
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Of course, there has to be a competency test on any person we hire. Performance evaluations
Right,
determine they're
right.
doing the job, right?
Right.
I think that of course, setting other financial milestones, I think gets
We also
complicated.
don't want someone who's deep in retirement just hiding in an office somewhere either. You know.
Agreed.
so just for procedure, okay, so we've had this discussion, it was done before town meeting. So if I wanted to bring this up on the floor of town meeting and when it doesn't really affect the budget, it's kind of a strange,
Well, town meeting doesn't typically, town meeting votes on 8, I'm going to get this wrong, Rosemary, 8 or 9 categories. Town meeting does not vote on individual line items. So even from that perspective, we don't vote on each and every line item. The town meeting has never done that here. We vote in large categories. Public safety
no,
all
I
gets voted as a
understand. Well, you
tranche.
can pull something out.
You vote only on the total. So
But-
for instance.
But you can.
No, actually, the way this isn't anything I
Great
created.
opportunity to have legal counsel with me.
The way we handle town meeting is town meeting's budget is voted in 8 categories. So I'm using public safety because it's easier for me. The public safety line item is voted in total. So when you vote public safety, you're voting police, fire, emergency management. I think those are the categories that are in that. If you affect that total, then quite frankly, from an operational perspective, we have to figure out how we're going to deliver the services of those 3 departments with the amended total.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
No, but you can amend it. You don't have to we don't have to just say yes or no to, we can say, we'd like to take,
Unlike the school budget, you mean?
unlike the school budget, and that's the other thing, and we won't go there, but we
Sort of.
can't get the legal budget out of the school department, not that they're unique. You can't get it out of any community short of probably a FOIA. So we don't even know, sharing a lawyer, we don't even know what they're spending.
I think Selectman Smedley's point is if the public safety line item is $10 million,
Yep.
town meeting can vote $9.9 million.
They can.
Yes,
Right,
that's
but
what I'm saying.
but not
But not
John
where
Smith's
the
line
$100,000
item.
is coming from.
But
correct?
Right.
not the
But
salary
we're not going to
line
pull
item.
the legal line item. That's an internal, not an internal, but it's a policy decision by this board, I
Just a
believe.
clarification question. We're talking about dollars and cents for this, and we're saying the school's going to contribute 5%.
No,
Nope.
40,000.
$45,000.
But it's still taxpayer money, it's just
But
being moved.
are the figures we're talking including the schools now?
But they're not going to, they also have, this will be a joint venture with them.
Yeah.
So $45,000 of their budget will go towards this salary, so that we are saving on their side as well as our side, if I understand this correctly. They have a separate...
Their goal right now is they wanted to see an in-house attorney, because I believe that the goal was more human resources related for them. If am I speaking out of turn? They had more HR questions that they were going to
Yeah,
utilize
'cause
this person
they have
for.
Chapter 766
Uh-huh.
issues. Those would be,
These come out of their budget?
Yes.
Mhm.
And it's their legal counsel is appointed by them as well. I think that, this is a small group in our room. I think that this is something that among our peers, I mean, they've entrusted us with steering the ship on this, and they think that it's worthwhile as well. And I know that there's not any surprise. Stan's not here tonight. This would be a good time to have somebody from the school committee.
No,
but
maybe not.
I mean, their policy has been to move forward as well. And
So,
M-
question
Mrs.
for Andrew,
Yes,
the
sir.
$585,000 you quoted earlier, was that including the money the school department
No.
spent? That's just municipal.
Municipal.
but that was over several years.
The
I
municipal,
know that, I'm
from
just wondering.
2008 to 2011, the town of North Andover general government spent $951,728.85. That does not include any school expenditure on legal, whether it was on special education, which is a separate issue for them.
Totally specialized.
Not part of this conversation. The way to look at the school, and this is going to be a bad way to look at it, the way to look at the school partnership in this case would be to take your $165,000 legal line item in the general government and add 45 to it. And now your spending capacity is 210. It's not the way we're necessarily handling it, but that's the way to look at it. They're adding dollars into your spending capacity, of which from that total will come a legal counsel. And not all of that, but some of that would be used for specialized counsel depending on the initiative.
Okay.
So just getting back to my point, so this really isn't tied into town meeting at all. I cannot make this argument on the floor of town meeting because it's...
I will never tell you not to make any argument in full town meeting. I just don't, I guess what's the argument is that whatever category that legal is in, you would, what would be the argument? You know what I'm saying? Like, how would it work?
Wait a minute.
I know, that's why I'm
Is
talking to
choosing
them.
town council is Board of Selectmen appointment.
Yes.
So it's a policy.
charter. By the
We are
charter.
deciding the policy as to whether or not we have a in-house town council or an out-house town council. Ooh, that sounded silly, but
I mean,
we're outside.
town meeting could budget $50,000 instead of the $100,000.
The 100,000. However, but when it
higher in-house,
but it
if there
comes
was an
down
attorney that
to
existed.
Yes.
us. It's our appointment. We choose in-house or out of
Outside.
Your budget.
outside council.
That's what I'm...
So
It's just that this whole conversation came up while we were working on, and I'm trying to think, where does it connect? That's why I'm asking you.
Well, it came up, the whole conversation came up in 3 times before the last meeting. And one in the strategic planning session, one in the 5-year forecast, which I said I would likely make the suggestion, and again when I presented the budget in total and the selectmen chose to approve the budget without amendment. In all 3 cases, I indicated that, in the final case being the budget document itself, that this was a recommendation within the category of legal spending. It is ultimately your spending. So as I think you've all said, you choose to use the dollars any way you want. One attorney to represent every issue, whether they're skilled or not, would be, being facetious, at $500 an hour. 35 attorneys, each being paid $120. It is your line item to use as you want. What this form of government has chosen by methodology from a town meeting perspective, and it's perfectly logical, is that it leaves the authority of elected boards or the employed staff to make decisions once the dollars are appropriated. Town meeting doesn't get into individual. There are town meetings or towns where there are 90 votes, 85 votes, 50 votes. So town meeting is controlling the expenditure on each and every line item. That's not the government that's been here, as far as I understand, ever.
No.
We vote 8-ish, I'm going to be off again by 1, 8 categories, and then we're provided the latitude to move the money between those categories to keep things operating. So if the police department had a deficit, we could move money from the fire department to the police department. What we asked town meeting to do is to vote these broad categories in total, and town meeting entrusts with us the ability to operate the government as we communicated we would, and move money between line items when necessary. So amending this line item Still leaves you guys the authority with how to spend it, I think, as Mr. DeColigiero
No,
said.
and that's how I was interpreting it,
Yes.
too.
But tell me, yes.
Okay. Any further discussion in regards to this?
I mean, I would certainly make the motion to reconsider and take a more measured approach, take the Herbalist and Fieldstone up on their offer or renegotiate that somehow, as Andrew discussed, and I still think it's going to be a lot more money. So I would make that motion.
I will second it, but I'm going to abstain.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Abstain.
Abstaining?
So you're-
Okey-doke. For me personally, when I look at those numbers, I'm actually disturbed at the fact that I was unaware they were so high. I was on this board during that time.
Again, you have to, I don't know what the issues are, but they could have been.
They weren't that brutal.
I don't,
They were
I honestly don't remember.
$250,000 worth. We were overusing. We were. And to see those numbers,
But they've come down drastically.
they have come down drastically, but I also believe that's because there is a gatekeeper.
I agree.
I have not picked up the phone and talked to a town attorney in years. And I think this will offer us a better opportunity to have better direction. That's how I feel at the moment. I may have a different feel in a year.
I think it gives us an opportunity to ask
Well-
important questions.
Well, I guess I would just then, I respect everyone's opinion, I just respectfully disagree, but then I guess I would then suggest to the board, if this isn't tied to any kind of town meeting vote, which I couldn't figure out, and that's why I kept saying, what am I missing here? And I wasn't missing anything, but other than, is that when we look at the pool of applicants, maybe at that point, we make another decision, that we are not getting the pool that we thought we would.
And I think that's more than fair.
And
I think that's more than fair.
And I would ask, even though I know we have a subcommittee, I still want to be very involved and at least see the resumes as they come in to say, but we could discuss that later. So,
Okay, that's fair. More than fair.
all righty, I appreciate your indulgence on
Of course.
revisiting this again.
I'm glad that we did.
Yeah, it was a good.
It was a good discussion.
Disappointed, but I appreciate it.
But a good discussion nonetheless. No new business. We do have time for some public comment.
Oh, geez, time's up.
Nice.
Well, I wish I had the opportunity to provide some comments.
Yeah,
on
me
this
too.
particular issue. But now that I have the microphone, I think, while in terms...
Please.
John Smolak, 711 Dale Street. Just having heard the discussion, I saw this item on the agenda in terms of in-house counsel. I tend to agree with Rosemary, but for different reasons. Some different reasons. I think that counsel has to maintain its independence. And if you bring someone in-house, they tend to lose that independence. And I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but I've seen abuses in other cities and towns where that occurs. And there's at least a perception that when an employee comes in and an in-house attorney comes in, that you're going to have to give the right answer to whoever's asking that question, meaning the answer that the person asking the question wants to hear. And so I've seen that in other circumstances, and I don't think it's the right way to go. I mean, there are city solicitors out there that are hired all the time, but we don't have to look further than the Tribune to see some of the abuses, maybe for different reasons. But I really don't like the idea. When I'm on the other side, picking up phone to call the town, or I'm talking with town council, I want to speak to someone who has the expertise, so I don't have to teach them information. And so, because that wastes my client's time and it wastes the town's time to teach someone to do this, because I don't think you're going to get an expert, as has been indicated, when you hire someone, especially at that salary range. And I just feel that I don't think it's the way to go for this town. I just for those reasons, aside from the budgetary reasons, it may be an additional increase. I just don't like the staffing up in-house on legal. I mean, they may be able to be a jack of all trades, but I would never have an attorney who's a jack of all trades recodifying bylaws. it doesn't work. You need an expert. So I don't know how much money you save. I mean, there are some efficiencies, and I certainly understand that, but I think in-house counsel is not the way to go, personally.
Sort of like the carpenter, the inexperienced carpenter will take, 4 hours to fix something, whereas the experienced one knows how to do it and gets it done in an hour. So at the end of the day, you pay less.
Yeah.
But
Well, what we're saying right now is, I'm going to go back to Tracy. Tracy, you made a comment, and I completely see myself being in a similar position if we stay on this path years from now, which is you haven't picked up the phone to even ask the question in years. So I'd rather have an inexperienced, and I don't think that this is inexperienced, but to go with that metaphor, an inexperienced carpenter taking 4 hours to do what an experienced carpenter could do in 1 hour, as opposed to not doing it at all, which is what.
that was your choice. You should have picked up the phone and said, I really would like to talk to him about this
But if it's
issue.
going to be about dollars,
Which
then
is what
we
this is
didn't
the
care about
discussion about.
$951,000. I mean, it's just, that's why I keep on getting struck by, let's forget the dollars for a minute. Because, and I think you know me well enough that I'm not trying to put the board in an awkward spot as relates to that. But the bottom line was, it was never mentioned. It was never part of a conversation of this Board of Selectmen in the 4 years that preceded me, because I looked, and the 4 years since I've been here. And we spent nearly $1 million. We didn't just get the carpenter, John, quite frankly. We got...
I use the example.
I'm trying to think of the better analogy for the best, maybe, whatever. I mean, $1 million. Does anybody remember the particular case? Does anyone remember the value added? So I get both sides of the argument. I appreciate the fact that no one's looking for a jack of all trades here, but there are things we could do better in-house in our, you, Mr. Smolak, tell me often some of the things we can do better, and I appreciate the feedback. There are things we can do better.
Never listen,
It's
but...
true. It's fair. Never shy of telling me we do better.
Just joking.
And so...
He's often right.
And I've told him he's
Just
not
ask
wrong.
me.
You often comment on the things we can do better.
No,
And we always can do better when we
Yeah.
put smart people in a room and ask as a group, what is it that we can do better to serve people? And today, we have a lot of smart people that work with us, but we don't have that regular resource. And so I don't look at it as a person who can answer every question. I look at it the value of buying someone with a set of skills that can make us better at what we do every day. And I think the belief that any local council that outside, because I've worked with a lot of outside council in my days, the belief that any single outside council can handle the breadth of municipal issues that we deal with, yet we often use one council to do that, from bylaw to CPC to planning to zoning.
Well, it's all land use.
Well, I'm just saying, so towns often use one company, we're not alone, to answer the wide range of questions. So the idea that you can't use one, that is the common practice of almost every town. They have one primary counsel, and whether it's a simple question about a contract or a question about a sophisticated land use matter, we go to the same person. And so at a minimum, hopefully what this conversation has done is, we should be paying more attention to that. We really should be paying more attention to that. Because I think what happens with all towns is they hire a firm, and then every year they revote the same firm, and without reviewing it.
No, we have done that in the past.
I think it's great to look at. It's definitely worth examining, and I applaud everyone taking a look at that, because it does raise the issue, raises the debate to see how we can most effectively serve the town. It's just a philosophical difference. That's all.
No, and I think it's a really valid point too, John. I don't think we're have the rampant corruption that we've seen possibly in some of the other communities.
No question. No question.
I mean, there's other communities in Massachusetts that have had, we're just a little corruption.
I feel better.
So I understand. I mean,
At least not recently.
Semi-dictators running some cities and towns. We're a collaborative board. No, you know exactly what I'm referring to. So and I don't mean with the...
Our Boy Scouts are thinking about co-op.
I know. The Boy Scouts like, what's that lady saying?
This badge is really worth it.
It really is. It really is. But you know what I mean. So I think it's an absolutely valid point. I hear the word city solicitor, and you get a plaid suit in your mind. I know exactly what you're
Yeah.
saying.
I don't know, I didn't get that.
A plaid suit with a big tie from the 70s, like, that's what I see when I hear the word city solicitor.
Wonder where they went to
When I
law
hear
school.
town council, I feel like it's going to be an absolute,
We'll get a letter from
Thinner
the
tie?
solicitors.
a thinner tie, and I know. And it's no offense, I'm talking like in the 70s, like when things were, more corrupt than they are today. I don't know, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
When I believe at this moment in time. I know. I need to stop it. My point is.
No, we don't know what you mean.
My point
go
is,
ahead,
though,
John.
in all
Go ahead.
seriousness,
No, just-
that I understand what you're saying about a city solicitor and not being, I hear that and it brings up connotations. I get that. I think what we're looking for in a town council is a partner, is going to be an asset, and someone that, as we've said, we've all, many of us anyway, have held back and maybe should have gotten some better advice at different times throughout our tenure. And looking at some of those numbers, maybe too much when I first got on the board. So, my hope is that this person, brings a lot of added value to not only this board, but the community. And really, the only way we're going to know that is if we do it.
Well, we have to interview first and see if we can get the person that's going to fit this.
And you're right, and I think it's very valid
And
that
if
should
we
the
don't-
pool of applicants
If we
be
don't-
inadequate, then yeah, it needs to be looked at. But I was very on the fence about this, really up until today, in all honesty.
I think you're getting a great, for the range that I just heard for the hourly rate, you're getting a great value for that range, and I understand they can't be the experts in everything. And that's why there are some firms out there, and you're aware of them, and you use them, that are counseled to many different municipalities. So when you pick up the phone, you get the expert as opposed to the first-year associate.
Well, we did have a problem
Cutting
with that. We
teeth.
won't mention the name of the firm, but we had one board.
Happens all the time, yeah.
One board was being recommended by one counsel from that same firm to do something. The other board was being recommended to do something else, and you know what happened? Each board, Donnie remembers, sued one another,
Yeah.
and we had
My
to pay.
goodness gracious.
Because the company didn't collaborate, and they did. They put their junior attorneys in charge, and that's how we ended up.
But that's
Yeah.
a management issue, and I'm sure that Andrew has the management under control in that, so to make sure we get
It
the
is
right
a
person for the right attorney.
That,
So,
bad enough the law firm did that, to believe that we didn't have some involvement.
That's true.
We got to know what our attorneys are doing.
Yeah.
That's, if the lesson of the last 4 years is we need to know what our attorneys are doing. And we do pay a lot of time and attention on what they're using the resources for. They cannot file suit in absentia without us. We are parties to the suit.
Right.
So they don't represent the individual boards. They have to communicate back to this board. But anyway.
I just mentioned something very quickly, and Dawn, I promise I'll be short. Okay?
You are short.
He
Can I
says that
say?
to all of them.
Everybody's short.
It's my Polish side. So, anyway, just quickly, I know that the topic of discussion didn't come up with a certain article this evening, but I want to make sure that this Board of Selectmen, as the policymaking body, sends a clear direction, because we have a board that's struggling with the idea of permit consolidation or streamlining. And, I think that over the past 15 years, this town has been making a conscious effort to streamline where we can, where opportunities arise, so that good economic development opportunities can come our way. But with turnover in board members, it's always appropriate for a certain board to reevaluate the position. But they're struggling with the idea of permit consolidation, and the question is whether this board, as a board total, as an entire board, maintains a policy of trying to consolidate permitting for opportunities that arise with respect to land use projects. I understand the idea of multiple reviews are sometimes helpful, but sometimes that could have the opposite effect with someone coming in with a project brand new, and they see that you have to go through multiple boards, often with duplicative criteria that don't make sense to be reviewed separately, but should be reviewed by a single board in terms of streamlining. So
I believe we've done this in other areas of town.
Done.
Single.
Single
Kind of single,
review?
permitting authority. I mean,
Yeah.
office
We have a combination, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, we did it last year with
That's
East and
what I
West
thought.
Mill.
With
We did
East
it the
Mill,
year
we did it
before with
last
East and
year.
West Mill. We did it 8 years ago with the parking bylaw provisions where we consolidated review to allow for waivers to be granted by one board instead of going to two separate boards. So just, I think it'd be helpful, whether the board today or subsequently, just sends a message to folks, not suggesting that boards decide in a certain way based on your influence, but I think you're the policy-making body, and so there should be a message as to the direction the town wants to head in terms of permit consolidation.
I think, after studying this particular article and doing a little bit of research on it, I think the thing that, again, it's not so much that they were telling them how to make a decision, but this property has been empty a long time, and we're meeting most of our goals. Now, having said that, the neighbors need to be taken into account, but what we're getting is what we've been hoping for a long time. We're getting retail on the front, high-end retail. We are getting, as I got to say, we're getting someone else to pay for the sewer. That was always been, I fought with this board saying that we'll let the developer do it, and we're getting someone else to pay for the sewer that brings it down. We're supposedly getting high-end retail. We're getting high-end
residential.
apartments
Yeah,
that don't. But all of this, I just.
Having a conversation with
I don't,
them.
yeah, I don't want to
Yeah,
get
we can't
into,
get into the
I don't want to stray into that
actual-
discussion, but I appreciate that.
But
All
what
I'm
all
sticking
I'm
as a
saying is,
policy,
I just,
that's all.
okay, I
I'm just
probably
saying we have
said,
an on-agenda item in fairness, John. No one has
Yeah.
to be on the agenda. I'm the appointing authority of the planning board. The
Yeah.
board can choose what it wants. I think this is, maybe it's a very meritorious discussion. The problem is it's linked directly to an article that's been filed before a town meeting, and because of timing, no one's fault, certainly not yours or the developer, didn't go through the proper vetting process of the planning board. It doesn't mean it doesn't have merit, but that's part of the sort of tension around the article.
Yeah,
I'm
well-
just saying, it was, I think I would have more than happy if you call my office, add it to the agenda. It's not on the agenda, so having a conversation, if you guys can.
No,
I'd
I-
like to just finish, I'd like to at
That's
least
all.
finish my thought. So what I'm basically saying is, this is an important thing for them to consider, and we hope that they just give it, in their capacity as a planning board, consideration, that's all. Just,
Yeah.
that's all I'm saying.
Well, they'll
We're
be
telling them
voting
how to
on it
vote.
next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
So that's all. I didn't mean to delve into that depth. All I meant to do is look for
I
policy
did,
to
but-
provide, thank you, but looking for just policy direction from this Board of Selectmen, that's all.
Any other public comment this evening?
Thank you.
Boys, nothing to say after all this fun?
who's running for office back there now?
Yeah. Don't. Do I have,
Not worth the pay,
yeah.
Yeah, it's big
I
pay.
can tell you that.
All
Madam
right,
Chair.
no public,
Oh, I was gonna jump
No,
in. I was gonna try to beat Ben
please
Dunn.
do. I need a motion.
Don't take.
I don't want to take that away from him. I shouldn't.
Come on, move to it, Chair.
We'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye.